The Battle of Midway, a turning point made of secrets. Imagine it's 1942, just months after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. The United States is bruised, uncertain, and wary of the powerful Japanese Navy that seems unbeatable. But in the Pacific, there's one tiny speck of land, Midway Atoll, barely more than a few square miles, that the Americans hold. And the Japanese are planning to seize it. This small piece of land will become the center of one of World War II's greatest intelligence coups and one of the war's most decisive battles. But here's the twist: the Americans don't know the Japanese plan to attack Midway. They only know that Japan's Navy has set its sights on a location cryptically called AAF. To understand how AF went from a mystery to a key to victory, let's start in a secret room on the Hawaiian island of Oahu Station Hypo. Here, in a cluttered basement, a team of codebreakers works tirelessly to crack Japanese messages. They're led by Commander Joseph Rochefort, a brilliant but eccentric officer known for wearing a red bathrobe and slippers while he worked. Rochefort and his team are exhausted, listening to Japanese messages for any clue about what AF could mean. This group, armed with little more than pencils, notebooks, and an obsession with breaking codes, intercepts a message that makes their ears perk up. The Japanese are planning a major attack on AF, but where is AF? The Americans know that if they can crack this code, they might be able to prepare for the attack and turn the tide of the war. Rochefort suspects that AF might be Midway, but he can't be sure. And making a mistake on this guess could mean a devastating blow to the U.S. fleet. So Rochefort decides to take a gamble, a clever trick that, if successful, could confirm his hunch. The idea? Make the Japanese reveal AF's location without even realizing it. He sends out an unencrypted message from Midway saying that their water desalination plant has broken down and they're running low on fresh water. The message is sent out in the clear, totally unencrypted, knowing the Japanese are likely to pick it up. And here's where it gets interesting. Just as Rochefort had hoped, the Japanese intercept this message. Shortly afterward, the Americans decode another Japanese message, which reports that AF is experiencing a water shortage. Rochefort's gamble has paid off. They've confirmed that Midway is AF. And here's where it gets interesting. Just as Rochefort had hoped, the Japanese intercept this message. Shortly afterward, the Americans decode another Japanese message, which reports that AF is experiencing a water shortage. Rochefort's gamble has paid off. They've confirmed that Midway is AF. This moment of discovery is crucial, because now the U.S. knows exactly where Japan plans to attack, and they're going to use this information to turn the tables in a dramatic ambush. Admiral Chester Nimitz, commander of the Pacific Fleet, now has an opportunity he thought he'd never get to go on the offensive. He quickly sets up a brilliant trap. He decides to position the American fleet near Midway, but hidden just beyond the horizon, out of sight of Japanese planes. This means the Japanese will arrive, confident and unsuspecting, while the American carriers lie in wait. Nimitz sends 3 aircraft carriers, Yorktown, Enterprise, and Hornet, to Midway. The catch is that Yorktown is still damaged from a previous battle, and repair crews race to get it back into action in just 3 days, a job that normally takes months. The tension here is intense, as every sailor and pilot knows the risk they're about to take. If they fail, the U.S. Navy in the Pacific could be wiped out. On the morning of June 4th, 1942, Japanese planes launched their first assault on Midway, bombing the island and expecting no major resistance. But while they're focused on the island, American pilots are preparing their own strike. High above the water, planes from Enterprise and Yorktown close in on the Japanese fleet. The Japanese carriers are vulnerable, with decks full of planes being refueled and rearmed for the next attack. Just then, American dive bombers, almost out of fuel after a long search, spot the Japanese fleet. They take aim and dive. In a series of precision attacks, the American bombers strike one carrier after another. Within minutes, 3 of Japan's prized carriers Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu are engulfed in flames. It's a devastating loss for Japan's Navy. Their 4th carrier, Hiryu, manages to launch a counterattack, severely damaging Yorktown, But soon WW2 is hit and destroyed. In just a single day, Japan's navy suffers a blow it will never fully recover from. 4 of their best carriers are gone, and with them, Japan's hope of dominating the Pacific. The Battle of Midway becomes the turning point of the Pacific War. What started with a single unencrypted message about a water shortage ends with Japan's naval power severely crippled. From this point on, the Japanese Navy would be on the defensive, and the Americans would begin a slow, island-by-island march toward victory. This wasn't just a battle of ships and planes, it was a battle of wits, strategy, and intelligence. The Americans had outsmarted Japan at its own game, using deception and brilliant codebreak. As we close the story of the Battle of Midway, let's take a step back and think about what this single battle truly meant, not just to the outcome of the Pacific War, but to the course of history itself. In those tense days in June of 1942, just 6 months after Pearl Harbor, few could have imagined that a battle over a tiny, isolated atoll would tip the balance of power in the Pacific. The Battle of Midway marked a turning point. But more than that, it showed the world that victory in modern warfare doesn't always depend on the size of your fleet or the strength of your weaponry. Sometimes it's the daring creativity, the bravery to take calculated risks, and the persistence of those working in the shadows that turn the tide. Consider Commander Joseph Rochefort, the unassuming, eccentric codebreaker, who spent hours hunched over his desk in that basement known as Station Hypo. Armed with only his wits and his obsession with understanding Japan's secret codes, he cracked the mystery of AAF. Rochefort's red bathrobe, his wild theories, and his unconventional ideas may have seemed strange to some, but in the end, it was his bold thinking that helped lead the Americans to victory. And let's not forget Admiral Chester Nimitz, the leader who made the final, daring decision to trust the cryptanalysts, even when many in the high command were skeptical. He took the risk to set an ambush for an enemy that had appeared unstoppable, knowing that the fate of the Pacific Fleet was on the line. Nimitz's gamble wasn't just a stroke of tactical genius, it was an act of courage and faith in the intelligence and dedication of his team. For Japan, the loss was profound, almost unimaginable. 4 of their best carriers, nearly 250 aircraft, and some of their finest pilots were lost in a single battle. This defeat shattered the myth of Japan's invincibility and marked the beginning of a relentless retreat that would eventually lead to their surrender. From Midway onward, Japan would be on the defensive, as the Americans pressed forward with a fierce determination born of hope and new confidence.